10,000 dragon, more like 1,500 dragon, am I right? Okay, so I don't usually talk about pre-sale prices too much, and especially when it's just people listing cards for an amount, but we're not just talking about people listing 10,000 dragon for $1,500. We are talking about several actual concrete completed sales on eBay for that price, and sometimes even more. Now, in some cases, it looks like the seller took the best offer, but there are actual cases that we can see on eBay right now of people buying this card for $1,500. Now, depending on when you're watching this video, the price might have increased or decreased. Right now, we are at the first week of the Battles of Legend Armageddon set actually being released in the TCG, so if you're watching this like months from now or a year from now, yes, the price tag probably changed. This is obviously pretty insane. Even for players that are used to actually buying more expensive Yu-Gi-Oh cards, something like this is really unheard of. I don't even know if we've ever seen a card debut out of a set with this price tag and actually have people buy the card. That is a pretty big difference. Like I said, anytime someone lists a card for a crazy price online, that doesn't automatically make it what it's actually worth. But this is a case where people actually are going out and buying this card for this outrageous price tag, and I want to talk about why in today's video. As always, when I talk about budgets, it's important to remember that not everyone has the exact same budget. Just because you yourself would never pay $1,000 for a single Yu-Gi-Oh card doesn't actually mean that other people are in the same boat. That being said, this card luckily isn't that competitively viable, which means you don't have to worry about buying any copies for your actual decks. So why is it called 10,000 Dragon? Well, this is a card that was released in celebration of hitting 10,000 unique cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. The OCG actually got this card a little while ago because they have more cards than we do, but this is the first time that we're getting it in the TCG. Now, this card is in its own rarity category. I think people are calling it the 10,000 rarity or something along those lines. Basically, though, it is a Starlight rare with some added extra benefits, like it has red text and it looks really crazy. Here's the thing about these Starlight rare type cards in Battles of Legend Armageddon. There's only two of them. You have this one and you have Utopia with the astral text, and that basically means, and we now know because people have opened a lot of cases, you're going to pull about one of either of these cards out of every two cases. That means that on average, something like 10,000 Dragon is a 1 in 4 cases pull. Now, in each case, there are 12 boxes, so we're looking at a card here that on average is a 1 of out of every 48 boxes. That is a lot of packs. Please note that the card is not short printed in the conventional way. This thing is just printed as much as any regular Starlight rare, which is 1 in 2 cases, and then it's a 1 in 4 cases chance because there are 2 different Starlight rares in this set. I know people like to throw around words like short printed, but this is not really a case of that. It's just a rarity that is very hard to pull. It's not necessarily short printed more so than any other Starlight rare. There are a couple of fun things on this card that I think collectors would appreciate. The set ID of it is 10K, which is pretty cool, and the passcode in the bottom left hand corner says 10,000, which is actually pretty weird to see, a passcode with so many zeros. There's also a light watermark in the text of this card. I think it's along the same lines like the speed dueling watermark that they use, but this one says 10,000, which is pretty nice looking. Also, right now at least, there aren't that many great scans of the English version of this card, so I'm going to use a proxy on the screen so that we can actually read the effect. 10,000 Dragon, of course, is a level 10 dragon monster, as you probably would expect. It is a dark monster with question mark attack and question mark defense. It says cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by tributing monsters you control whose combined attack and defense is 10,000 or more. If summoned this way, the attack and defense of this card becomes 10,000. So the effect is not very good. It's pretty much just a worse version of Emperor Maju Garzette or Legendary Maju Garzette. Both of them have pretty similar summoning conditions, but they also have an added benefit. Granted, these cards are not very good either, but they are slightly better, I would say, on average than 10,000 Dragon. When you are buying, or if you are buying 10,000 Dragon, you're not buying it because it's competitively viable. You're buying it because it's an iconic Yu-Gi-Oh card, or it's going to be sometime in the future. The card is extremely rare, but not very powerful, so why is it so expensive? Here's the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh cards cards and many other card games. Just because something is not competitively viable doesn't mean it's not going to be expensive. While not nearly as rare, I will say this thing does remind me a lot of the World Championship prize cards. Now those things, there are way less of them in circulation than 10,000 Dragon. Those are things that you only get from topping the World Championship, which is obviously a really hard thing to do. However, those cards are very expensive, way more expensive than 10,000 Dragon, and also they're completely illegal. It's not about them being bad or good, you just can't play them in a duel. It says so right on the card. But people still pay outrageous amounts for those cards because they're so rare, and this really is a trading card game. I know that gets lost sometimes, you know, we're so focused on playing the game and building decks, but a huge portion of card games and what makes them so exciting is pulling rare cards or owning rare cards. Will 10,000 Dragon ever be as expensive as World Championship prize cards? The answer is probably not. There are way less World Championship prize cards in circulation than even something as rare as this card, but I can understand why 10,000 Dragon would appeal to collectors in a very similar way as those very expensive prize cards. The part where this gets really interesting is why is this card so much more expensive than other Starlight rares? Don't get me wrong, even the less good Starlight rares are still pretty expensive, like a few $100s, but this thing is $1,500, and what's even crazier is that on average this thing is actually easier to pull than your regular Starlight rare. See, the difference here is that even though you are pulling either Utopia or 10,000 Dragon out of every 2 cases, so they're still pretty hard to pull, there's only 2 different possibilities for that category of cards. In core sets right now you have 5 Starlight rares, and in the past you had 4 Starlight rares, so while you were pulling them at the same rate, 1 Starlight rare every 2 cases, there were more Starlight rares to pull than there are in Battles of Legend Armageddon. So it's not competitively viable, and it's technically easier to pull than your average Starlight rare, so why is it so much more expensive? Well, House of Champs has made a couple videos on Battles of Legend Armageddon, and it seems like there are some rumors floating around that the set is short printed, like the entire set overall. However, John knows a lot of vendors, and what he seems to say here is that they're saying that they are getting most of their shipment in for this set. They're not really missing too many boxes or too many cases. Now, one thing that might be different here is that people buy less of side sets than core sets, so maybe just in general there are less boxes of the set in rotation. I don't really have the numbers for that. I'm not even sure how I would be able to get those numbers, but other than that though, I don't really think there's any big reason that this card should be so expensive. Like I said, I don't have vendor connections. I don't know all the official numbers here. I'm just going off of what other people have said that do know vendors or have actually bought cases themselves, but in my mind, I'm looking at a card that has about the same pull rate as a regular Starlight rare, and maybe even it's easier to pull than a regular Starlight rare, and it's also not very competitively viable. I think there are 3 different things happening. First off, it is a new rarity because it is not a true Starlight rare. It is its own rarity, the 10,000 rare or whatever. It has that red text. It looks really cool. I think that is contributing to how expensive this card is. It is truly a one-of-a-kind card. We might never see this rarity ever again. We don't really know. The second thing that I think is happening here is that this card is extremely iconic, way more than your average Starlight rare. Even the competitively viable Starlight rares like Appaloosa and IP Masquerena and things like that are not nearly as iconic as the number 10,000 out of all the cards released. This is a huge milestone, and I think for many players, myself included, I wouldn't really consider playing or buying a regular Starlight rare, even like Appaloosa or IP Masquerena, to play in an actual deck. And don't get me wrong, I love playing max rarity cards, but those cards are so expensive, and to actually use them in a duel would be very nerve-wracking. I mean, I don't want to summon a $1,000 card and have my opponent say, oh, can I pick that up? And then they bend it by accident. I mean, that would just be a disaster. But this card, on the other hand, I'm actually very interested in picking up. I think it would be a really cool collector's item for any Yu-Gi-Oh fan. While I wouldn't play it in any decks, I would sort of keep it as a trophy for the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG hitting 10,000 cards, and I think that owning that card that is a symbol of that milestone would be really awesome. The third reason that I think people are picking up this card at a really crazy crazy prices for a long-term investment. Here's the thing, if this card is reprinted somewhere down the line, I really doubt it'll be in this exact same rarity. I really do think even if this card actually does get that second printing, which I kind of doubt, but if it does, it'll probably not be in this special 10,000 rarity. Personally, I don't do a lot of playing the market. I don't try to buy low and sell high. I don't really have the time to look at the market all the time and try to do that sort of thing, so I usually just buy the cards that I need for my decks. Occasionally, I will buy collector's items just because I personally want them, and then yeah, they do increase in price over time. I think of like the 2018 envelope and 2019 envelope from the World Celebration event, which was pretty exciting. I did own both of those for quite a while, and then I actually recently sold them, and yes, they did increase in price since the original time that I bought them, but I personally didn't buy them as an investment. I just bought them because I thought they were cool. At the end of the day, the reason I made this video is because I saw a lot of confusion about 10,000 Dragon from the average player. A lot of people didn't understand why it was called 10,000 Dragon and why it was so important and unique. A lot of people didn't understand the rarity of the card and how hard it was to pull out of a box, because it is 1 in 48 boxes, which is absolutely insane. So I wanted to make a video explaining it to the average player. As with all collectible items, but especially those in trading card games, these are not for everyone. Not everyone really cares about a super expensive, super hard to pull iconic monster like this, but some people really do, and those players might be willing to pay quite a lot to own this card. Anyway though, thank you guys so much for watching today's discussion video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.